YouTube. Meeting is now streaming live on YouTube. And here we go. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Cheecast. It's what? It's Thursday. It's Friday Eve. Not that that really matters much right now. Because every day is a weekend during the, what are we on now? Day 734?
Seems like it with everyone. Oh, there it is. Nice.
Stuck here in the bat cave. Let's see. On YouTube, we are streaming live on YouTube. Put all the fun stuff up on Facebook. And yeah. So how are you making out during the quarantine there, Shane? We were just, before we came on stream, we were talking about taking walks in the woods, which, yeah, I feel like everybody needs that right now, a little walk in the woods.
Yeah, for sure. But yeah, everything's good over here. Just continuing my practice with Tai Chi and recently picked up the bow staff. So swinging that around and yeah, just still studying. And like we were saying earlier, taking walks in the woods, and around this area, there's this crazy invasive vine. So every time I go back out into the woods, I take my machete and chop down some of the vine, cut it off the trees, and chop down sticker bushes and everything to make sure that the paths are clear, and the vine just doesn't take over the little bit of woods that I have in my backyard. There's like 16 acres around my house that I get to walk in with a creek as well. So yeah, just go out there and meditate, hang out, walk around, check out the animals, and just enjoy it, right? So, and then on top of that, I'm redoing I still stay at my parents' house here, so I'm helping them do some house repairs. So redoing the office, so there's some pop nails in there. So yeah, doing that, repainting the room, gonna rip up the carpet, put down hardwood floor, and yeah, staying busy. Hang out, walk around.
Cool. Yeah, I have found that I'm getting back in touch with like hobbies and projects that I haven't worked on for a long time. Actually got like 3 hours straight of writing done yesterday, and I like split it up. I was like, all right, so I'm gonna take an hour to review stuff that I've already edited, an hour to edit stuff that I haven't edited yet, and an hour to create.
Staying busy.
Right, and it's surprising. It's like bip, next thing, 3 hours earlier. But I have found that I'm getting back in touch with like hobbies, which was pretty cool. Projects that I haven't worked on for a long time.
Marcus, I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but there's some crazy reverb going on at the moment.
I was like, all right, is there? I'm gonna take an hour to see if we can fix that. I've already edited, an hour to edit stuff that I haven't edited yet, and an hour to create. Right, and it's surprising. It's like bip, next thing, 3 hours earlier. But I have found that I'm getting back in touch with hobbies, which was pretty cool. Projects that I haven't.
And layered on top of layered now. I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but there's some crazy reverb going on at the moment.
I was like, all right, is there? I'm gonna take an hour to anything. See if we can fix that.
It's still there.
It's still there. I think it's you.
Yeah.
Edit stuff that I haven't edited yet. Let's see. I'm gonna turn down. But I have found them that works. Which was pretty cool. Rid of it.
I don't know how to turn it. Layered on top of layered now. I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but there's some crazy reverb going on at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's all on you, Shane. So now I gotta carry the Cheecast. Shane's got reverb. Well, let's look at the news. I think it's now. Let's not. I found the virus that. What we need is what everybody needs.
Layered on top of layered now. I don't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry, but there's some crazy reverb going on at the moment.
Yeah, I think it's all on you, Shane. This is like watching. Man, discover fire. For now, I got Carrie going on one. Well, let's look at the news. Uh-oh. Now this, ladies and gentlemen, are the fun parts. Hosting the Cheekcast. What we need, or hosting any kind of podcast.
Layered
especially with a bunch of tight stalkers like myself. Yeah, I think it's a fun new shit. This is like watching you. Man, we haven't had any problems like this. I got to get started. I'm going to have to lay this at your feet there, Mr. Brave.
No. I don't know how to fix it.
It might be worth you dropping out and dropping back in.
Yeah.
And then I will carry the cast here. So we're just going to ignore Shane for a moment.
All right, we'll be back.
Abilities together. We haven't had a speaker of you. So you get to hang out with me and just me here for the next couple of minutes while Shane comes back in. But that's always fun because it gives me a chance to talk to you guys and see how everyone's doing. And I hope everybody is doing very, very well. It might be worth you dropping out. COVID-19 day 1200. And I will carry the cast here. We like to bring this to everybody because we're just going to ignore Shane. The world needs a lot of positivity right now.
It's still there.
It's still there.
Yeah.
I'm definitely going to go with you. That's always fun.
I don't have a chance. Dude, try it again.
I hope everybody. All right, try it again. Very well. All right, so yes, as I was saying, the world needs a little positivity, but the world always needs a little positivity, no matter how you look at it. There's always we like to bring something to everybody in the world. We're just going to war, economic crisis. Quite frankly, right now we're facing World 3, and how it feels as Armageddon in a sense, but it really isn't. It really isn't. We have weathered as a species things far worse than COVID. All right, try it again. All right, so yes, as I was saying, the world needs a little positivity, but the world always needs a little positivity. All of London is locked down into the German bombers, and they managed to pop out. Economic crisis. Maybe a little worse right now. We're better off. Oh, that reverb going there, Shane.
Yeah, it's so heavy.
Yeah, I think you're just gonna have to eat that, man. Oh, it's my fault. Me with the fancy equipment over here. No reverb. Now it says if you keep passing on the blame.
Then it's YouTube's fault.
They managed to pop out. That could be it. It is funny though. That reverb in the world of COVID-19, and we have this going on. Yeah, same time as the presidential plasma. And actually, we're getting close to with playoff season for hockey and no reverb college basketball. So a lot of competition and a lot of finger pointing starts to come in. With a bunch of winners and losers. There's always that. Hey, who's doing this? That could be yesterday. It is funny to say. The pastor that came over at the world of chapter 78, and we have this going on. Yeah, talking about basketball playing, doing that. Nothing ever. Oh, actually, we're getting close to with playoffs going along. But you have to have the reverb stops here. You. So a lot of it says and a lot of figure out what in the grand scheme of things. There's always that. Hey, that could be so either yesterday next time. It is funny to say. That game's not going to came over and pick up and Shane. We have this going on. Talking about playing. Doing that. Nothing. Oh, actually, we're getting here.
Just reverb at the moment.
So a lot of you switch to an external speaker out what in the grand scheme of things. There's always actually carry the Cheekcast here for a second. I'm gonna see if I can tell you yesterday next time. It is funny to say. That game's over.
So yeah, it reverb is something else.
This going on, talking about playing. Oh, actually, we're getting here. Is that your cheek cachet and you're just going to stare up longingly at the sky?
I can't. Conversations going on.
Actually, care the cheek. Are you sure the reverb is in your computer? It sounds like it might be.
That game over and over and over again. So yeah, reverb is something else.
All right, I'm gonna turn my test speaker on. And see if I can give us that. Oh, actually, is that your cheek cachet? You're just gonna stare up longingly and test it. Nope.
Every time conversations going on.
Actually, care the cheek. Sure, the reverb is in your computer. That game
over and over again. So yeah, reverb is something else.
You only have one set of speakers over there. Speaker on. This is an engaging podcast for people engaged. Is that your cheek cachet? As we try to fix technical issues. This is going from a
So yeah,
you may. Good friend. You only have one set of speakers right there. This is an engaging podcast for people engaged. Is that your cheek cachet? As we try to fix technical issues. This is going from just sit my cheek. There's no Schadenfreude here.
I don't know what to do here. It's on this like continue. Yeah.
You may. Oh, really? You only have one set of speakers right there. And now you're like coming in and out. Is that your cachet?
It's the voice.
There's medicine. There's no shot. Sounded like a late night cell phone.
So I don't
Maybe
know.
we need to do these audio checks. Oh, really?
Carry on.
You're like, give it a shot on your phone. See if that'll clear things.
Yeah, right. You want to hear what I'm listening to? It's the voice.
I would say log out of your computer first, and then give it a shot on your phone. There's no shot. Sounded like a late night cell phone. All right, man. Little technical difficulties this morning, everybody. But maybe we need to do these audio. Shane coming down with the reverb in the laptop. Couple of bumps and bruises, but I'm still here with you. See if John.
Yeah, right. You want to hear what I'm listening to?
I guess it's the only part about doing it by myself. I would say log out of your computer first, and then that's all right. That's all right. In fact, sounded like he's calling me. All right. Let's see. Shade, you're calling me. Yeah. Shade down with the reverb. Couple of bumps. Give it a shot on your phone. See if John.
Yeah, right. You want to hear what I'm listening to?
I guess it's the part about doing it by myself. All right. Well, so we're gonna try something. That's all right. Try something fun. Wait a second. He's calling me. All right. Let's see. Shade. Oh, I see what's going on. I think you're right. I think it is the it's the YouTube stream. So, what up?
Yeah, you want to hear what I'm listening to?
No, but I think that's what you're hearing. So, we are still live. Does that try it one more time and see if that gets rid of the reverb? All right. Because I wonder that might be a thing. That might be a thing. All right, let's try it now.
Gone.
It's gone. All right. So apparently, so I'm gonna apologize to everybody because that might have been me because my computer was actually sending its feed. Yeah, it was me. You are correct, sir. And I had the speaker in the wrong jack. I'm still learning, people. I'd take the blame for that one, even though I passed it all off on Shane just prior to that. ladies and gentlemen, is what we call karma.
Right? Man, craziness.
And it happens live and in real time, which is cool. All right. So basically, we're not going to be able to monitor the live feed on YouTube the way we monitor the live feed on. Actually, we might be able to if I simply mute the YouTube stream. How about that? Let's give that a shot. And this is a test one, and it happens live. We weren't sure what was going to go down.
Turn the reverb back on.
Yep. And now I muted it, so we should be good. Okay. Should be good now. All right. That only took 15 minutes of our airtime here. It's all right. I will download it and cut it for time at some point in my so busy schedule. Yeah, I swear I am busier now than I was when I'm doing classes. I was talking to Jason about that the other day. Like, what? I'm doing this wrong. I really am.
Yeah, right. You're supposed to be freed up with time now, but well, you're launching that online program and everything like that. So I'm sure that's been quite busy, especially with everyone trying to get online and instructors wanting to be online and teach and continue teaching. So yeah, that's going to keep you busy.
Yeah. I mean, thankfully, most of the infrastructure for that has been built. So it's just a matter of following the targets and making sure everybody can get in and has the right links and all that kind of stuff. But while it's not completely built, we're definitely at a sort of maintenance level, which is pretty cool. So it's nice to see an idea come to fruition, because sometimes projects like that, you could lose track of them and they can spin out of control pretty quickly. And yeah, it's cool to be able to bring that and spread the love of Tai Chi across the interwebs, as it were.
Yeah, coming to never everyone needs Tai Chi, right?
That's right.
Yeah, it's
especially in a time of crisis like we have now. I was while I was mucking around looking for different meditative, background music, I came across this like 2-minute video, and it was like Taoism during the coronavirus or whatever, and it had this Wudang monk who was explaining, like, yes, this is a real crisis, and yes, you can be sick, and Taoists aren't immune from catching the virus, but because the focus of life is always internal, and you're always looking to be the best you can be, there's a good chance that your Tai Chi practice, your Qigong, your meditation has raised your immune system, like we say all the time, right? I mean, since I've been doing this, and you've known me pretty much since this was a thing, and I've only been sick, 3, maybe 4 times in the 4 years that we've known each other. And you don't really, I've only seen you sick 2 or 3 times. So it says a lot. And I know people like our age that are sick all the time. They're constantly fighting stuff off. But they live sedentary lives. They're not exercising. They're not watching their diets. There's all these other things because they're living externally and not taking that moment of internal reflection. It was an uplifting video to come across that and be like, yeah, keep on keeping on there, Tai Chi man.
Yeah, the practice is important, and I'm finding myself in a state of like excess yang, in the fact that, okay, now I got all this free time, and it's nice out now. It's springtime, so I'm getting busy outdoors and even indoors as well. But at the same extent, being too busy is not exactly a beneficial thing either. So, trying to get back on maintaining, waking up in the morning and having an hour-long sit for meditation, and an hour is important to do, because I found that right around like a half hour to 45 minutes is actually when my meditation starts. And then like a process begins where I start feeling uncomfortable. My mind really starts to drift heavier, and it becomes stronger, and the urge to want to get up and say, okay, I'm done, it really starts to set in. So getting back to that hour long is important for sitting, and to balance it out with the, redoing the office and everything, and planting new plants outside, and trying to stay busy, but at the same time got to sit, and then also do, the Tai Chi practice as well. But even that, like, you're always doing, and it just gets to be too much.
But what in the place of the doing, you're talking about meditation, but you're talking about meditation as if it is a doing. But isn't meditation really just being, right? Like you're just there? And what's the difference between the two? Because like you're always going to be doing something, even if you're just sitting there staring blankly at the wall, which in its own right is sort of being present in the moment, and can be a form of meditation. So does meditation equal one of the doings, I think is my question to you.
It can. I've ran into that issue before, where if I don't meditate in the morning and my day just starts, and I look back in some form of regret or irritation or judgment, where it's like, I didn't do my meditation, and be mindful of like the verbiage that I'm using as well. And yeah, it can turn into I have to do it, versus, it's nice just to kind of wake up and, let it happen somewhat organically, and sit and be okay with just sitting, and yeah, like you said, just allowing yourself to be. So
Right.
yeah, it's like a double-edged sword. While it can turn into doing something, it's also doing nothing, but doing nothing is doing something. I don't know. The best way to find out is, why don't you go ahead and sit for an hour and you tell me.
Wow. So as you know, I've done the sit, and one of my challenges was to sit every day for an hour for 7 days, and do meditations, and that was a torturous experience in the beginning.
Yeah.
Right. The first one I kind of got through it, and I was like, all right. Then I have this panic attack on day 2 before I even get into it. It's like, oh my God, 60 minutes. But by like day 4, I realized, so I normally meditate for a half hour anyway. So I was like, why are you freaking out about the first 30 minutes? You could do that. You do that normally, and you're pushing towards 60 minutes because you feel like 30 minutes isn't enough. So why are you freaking out? By day, I think it was 6, I realized that the issue with the hour-long sit is there comes a point where you start focusing on time and how much longer you have to sit there. And it's in that moment that you have to be okay with not knowing. That was the lesson that I pulled out of those 60-minute sits, was just being okay, not knowing when something's going to be over, and just enjoying the moment and staying right there. Whatever you got to do, break out your mantras, just observe the thoughts that are going on in your head, do breathing exercises, but just stick in that moment until you finally hear the gong go off. And that, I'm assuming you use a gong. I have a little digital gong that goes off on my timer. And that directly extrapolates right out into the real world at that point. Because there's all sorts of things like this coronavirus thing. We don't know what's going to happen with this whole thing, or what the world's going to look like when we finally come back from under quarantine. And so doing those long sits, like you were saying, really does, at least for me, it drove home that concept of being okay with not knowing what comes next, or not knowing how long something's going to go on.
Yeah, that's what you got out of your meditation. Just think that was only a week. Now, if you start applying that all the time, and again, like you said, like around like 45 minutes or so, you start feeling that process begin, where you start getting antsy and irritated and wondering, and your mind starts moving and grooving. And that's what I was saying, like that's kind of when my meditation actually starts. So it's almost like, even though I sit for an hour, I actually only meditate for 15 minutes. Because that's when it comes in, so like you're saying with everything that's going on right now, it would be really nice if everyone took the time to sit and to meditate, and not even to have anything going on as far as mantras or songs or anything, but just sit there and just simply observe your respiratory system and to breathe. And to translate that into Tai Chi, Tai Chi is, when we're doing our practice, you have to be breathing. If you're not breathing, then you're not getting a good chi flow, and it's detrimental. And doing Tai Chi to a point where you're breathing and you don't even notice you're breathing anymore. There's no hard breaths happening, or you're not trying to catch your breath. And breathing is everything. It seems like, it's one of your own personal medicines, you could say.
Oh, absolutely. Mind, body, and breath. Those are the three big things that every Tai Chi player are trying to put together. And you really do get a sense of your, and you're right, as far as like even those 60-minute sits, and what I really did start to enjoy, and I do them every now and then when I have the time, you spend that first, or at least I do. So I spend probably the first 10 to 15 minutes just settling in and letting my mind do whatever it wants to do. And then I start to focus on relaxing the body. So from the top of the head all the way down to the soles of the feet. And that in itself is its own challenge, because you've got to stay focused, breathing into a joint and then relaxing that joint as you breathe out, breathing into the next joint, relaxing that joint, not going across the body. So I'll, breathe into the left shoulder, breathe into the right shoulder, all the way down to, in the last couple of days, I started unlocking the finger joints as well. So it's taking that microscopic look at everything. So that takes you through your first 30 minutes, just observing your thoughts and then relaxing the body. And at that point, over the next half hour, what I've been learning is I have a set of, I think, 12 mantras that I use, and I used to just throw them out all the time. But I'll let the meditation sort of tell me which mantra I need that day. And I'll do those 4 mantras and I'll just repeat them. And I find that by the end of maybe the second, maybe halfway through the third, the mantras become meaningless. And at that point, I can just sit and settle and be in the moment. And that kind of brings you to that 45 minute mark at that point, and now you're ready for the 15 minute work. Right. But when you put it that way, because like at first, and I think what was causing me all that anxiety going into that week was that, oh, well, I've got to get through my mantras and I've got to get through my joint unlocking. I've got to get through this. And like, no, you're sitting there to enjoy the experience itself, not to accomplish anything. And you have to be okay with that. You have to be okay with not knowing. You have to be okay with not doing. Like, there's a lot going on. And yet you want to talk about some Wu Wei principle here. Action without doing, that is meditation in a nutshell, especially when you're doing it for as long as you are, for that 60 minutes every morning, which is crazy. You're a man, though.
Yeah, well, like you said, doesn't it become a doing when you start meditating? And what I think what you found, having to do all your meditative practice before you even meditate, you really weren't almost meditating. You were, you're still working and still doing something. And, like a lot of meditative practitioners and masters have said, you should meditate without any goal in mind.
Right.
You just sit and meditate just to meditate without any achievements and all of this. And yeah, just because you meditate for an hour, it's not like a badge of honor or an award you get at the end of it. It's just, you just sit for an hour. And I'd like to go longer, ultimately keep on pressing and develop the practice more. But man, my body aches really start going on strong, man. Like I get so stiff, especially in my hips and my knees, and the pain start. And that's like, pain's like becomes a whole new thing of like, what is pain? What is the body's pain? It's not my pain, it's the body's pain. And then itching as well. Like, what's an itch when you really start thinking about it when you're meditating? Yeah, like, what is this itch? It becomes like a manifestation of the mind to get you to fidget again and to react, and the mind's always reacting and craving and pushing towards it. So yeah, you sit there and you watch these itches, and man, I tell you what, so like the practice that I do is Vipassana meditation. So these 10-day long retreats, and yeah, you meditate for 10 hours a day, essentially from 4:30 in the morning to about 9:30 at night, with breaks. And there's also a discourse, a Dhamma talk at the end of the day. But yeah, like these itches slowly turn into like these burning sensations, as if someone's taking a cigarette and just putting it out on my neck or my body. And these are, from what I can understand, is the defilements of the mind coming out. And what you're doing there is purifying your mind and releasing it from the subconscious, or however you want to phrase it, but from deep down within, it comes out and it physically manifests itself. So, and there's quite a few practices that are along with that, like something like the body remembers, right, from trauma and drama and whatnot, and everything you've done to it, it holds it energetically in your body. And in Tai Chi, you can start to feel that as well, as you go through your practice and you start loosening up the body and everything. You start getting that good chi flow, and you start opening up the meridians and the gates. You start to purge yourself of it. And I don't know so much about it, I'm still learning, but the Qigong practice of like the first thing you need to do in Qigong is to start purifying yourself. You need to start purging yourself of the impurities. Otherwise, you're just filling up your vessel with clean water, but at the same time, you still got dirty water in there. You have to pour out your glass and get it empty again to fill it back in with something cleaner and purer and more refined.
Mm-hmm. No, I agree. So what would you, as a teacher, tell a person that was interested in meditating, but like a lot of people don't feel like they have enough time, don't feel that they would necessarily be able to just sit and do nothing for an indeterminate amount of time, even if it's only 2 or 3 minutes? What would be your suggestions to them to get them started, and why they should find value in getting started?
Well, there's quite a few questions there. So like, if the person is really earnest about sitting and meditating, then you have to start somewhere, right? So to start with an hour right off the bat, for most people, is just not going to be achievable because of the work schedule and everything, which is understandable. But ultimately, you really do want to get up to an hour. And because like I said, at 45 minutes, you start actually feeling your or a half hour, you start really kind of feeling it. Maybe for some people, it's actually in the first 10 to 15 minutes. So maybe, a half hour in the beginning is good enough, but anything's better than nothing. So if someone's needing to sit, the Dalai Lama says in one of his books that I read, that it's like 7 minutes, 4 7-minute sessions in a day. And like, that's achievable. You can find 7 minutes throughout your day, and just to sit and observe your breath. And it's a good recalibration throughout your day as well, because a reason to get into meditation is like going back to like yin yang theory, right? Like, we're overly yang in our way. And well, I seem to have lost Marcus there, but we're going to continue. We're overly young in that sense, so it's good to fall back and take a step back and take a breath, and to stick with some yin for a second, and to just sit and be still. Because anymore we're forced to be achieving something, to do something. When someone asks you like, what are you doing today? You have to fill it up with something, like, oh, I got this going on, I got work, I've been so busy, like, to validate your existence. And that's exhausting. Like, you shouldn't have to validate your existence. You're more than welcome just to be here. That's what Earth is for. That's what your existence is for, is to just be here. So yeah, to sit, it's important to sit and to enjoy your sitting, and to just be, to relax and to breathe once again, because breath is everything, as you can see in your own daily life. When you get scared, your breathing changes. When you climax, your breathing changes. When you're upset, your breathing changes. So everything falls back on your breath. So to fall back and sit for a second and just simply observe the sensation, the inhale and the exhale of breathing, it, hey, Marcus, you're back on. So just to be able to observe your breathing, the inhale and the coolness that comes in, and then when you exhale, the heat that comes out. And that's all in the meditation that I've learned, that's what it's all about. So Marcus, you cut out there for a second, and
Yep.
And I just kind of continued on with breathing, and how breathing is everything. And even when your emotional state changes, your breath changes automatically. So yeah, the importance of breathing and just to observe the breath. So like in my meditations that I've been like learned through Vipassana, it's simply like feeling the sensation of breathing right here, and any sort of sensation that arises from your breathing, and just to observe it and the sensation that's there. So it can be, there's always coolness and heat that comes from the meditation, and then also like 10,000 different sensations that can follow after that. And yeah, then you start scanning your body, something similar to what you do when you open up all your joints and you relax each and every part of your body.
Mm-hmm.
The next step, after you sharpen your mind's awareness, right? Like as a kid, they always say, focus, pay attention. It's like, well, okay, how do I do that then? You're telling me to do it, but I'm obviously having trouble doing it, and I don't know how to do it, but you're telling me to do it. Like, well, this is it. This is actually right here, just focusing in on that and bringing all your mind's attention, all your awareness to just that area of the body and breathing into it. You will naturally start to sharpen your mind's awareness and your attention. And then after that, you'll be able to focus a little bit better, because you're single pointed on something. You're not multitasking, right? Because you can't multitask. This is just sticking with one thing and one thing only for a certain period of time, and that teaches you how to focus. And then you scan your body up and down, and then you start to release all these tensions, these frustrations. So for a person who's looking to get into meditation and wondering why they should meditate, it's a way of settling into your body, relaxing the mind, because the mind is constantly, and when you meditate, it gives it a second to come back down and level off again, allow the dust to settle. And then energetically, you'll start to feel it as well inside your body. And whether you know it or not, I mean, people say you don't carry it energetically in your body, but what do you think those stress knots are on your back? There's knots. You're like, oh man, my back's killing. It's like, yeah, well, it's probably because you're stressed out, and that's where energetically you're holding it, or you get it up in here at the common spot, like right above the heart, or right up in these areas. And like in Tai Chi, in practice, like different Qigong practices, you do this to break up that stagnant chi, that stuck energy that's up in there, to give yourself a self massage or like self acupuncture to release that as well. And, to loosen yourself up, loosen your mind up, your body up, your spirit up. So yeah, meditation as a whole, and science. And on top of that, if you don't believe it, science backs it up. So if you don't believe that, then you can believe the science.
Yeah.
So, and it's
that's a big thing. There's not like a psychiatrist or behavioral health specialist or anybody of that nature that won't tell you that meditation doesn't help, no matter how you go. And most of them, a lot of them I know, because I walk in those circles, have their own practices and apply a lot of what you were talking about to their own personal lives. I know that I had not pushed, but introduced you to Yuval Harari, the Israeli historian. And I think it was in his third most recent book, like 21 Things for the 21st Century or something, where at the very end, he's like, well, how do, because when you read, and I think you listened to one while you were driving across country, it sounds like, oh, especially with Sapiens, like what he was talking about sounds like a lot of the conversations you and I have about the myths and the illusions and the constructs around society and how they are figments of our imagination, quite frankly. I think in Sapiens, there's one line where he says, if the UN brings Iran on the carpet over human rights abuses, the thing you have to keep in mind is that the UN, Iran, and human rights are all myths. Right? They're just things that we created in order to make life a little bit better for ourselves. And what I find so interesting, and I know this is a weird segue, let me finish my point first, is that at the end of, I think, his third book, he was saying that he was a practicer of Vipassana meditation, and thinking he was master of the universe and the controller of everything that he did. And then he sat down, tries to focus on the tip of his nose, and within 8 or 9 seconds, his mind starts to wander and he realizes, I'm not even in control of my own thoughts, let alone anything else that's going on in the universe. And I think that was such a powerful and poignant statement. Made me think about you, of course. But I think that's why I introduced you to him, was after I read that line, or at least heard it. Gotta love Audible, or any audiobook service, quite frankly, because Amazon not very popular right now in the news. And so no shilling for Amazon. But as a segue, we are actually watching in real time, because we have these conversations all the time. As you know, I have a sci-fi series that I'm writing, that the central theme of the entire sci-fi series is society is an illusion. So you can make it to be whatever you want it to be, that all of the constructs that existed, even though they have lifted up organically and evolved over time, are still constructs of the human imagination. And we're watching right now live as the illusion, which is our government and the economic system and even religion, the 3 pillars of society, are going up against the reality of biology and virology and immunology, and it doesn't know what to do with itself, it seems. And I would love you to weigh in on your observations with all of this, not necessarily about coronavirus, but just sort of the reaction to it.
Well, I guess first and foremost is like everything's based on fear. Like the mind is constantly doing that. It's either fearing or desiring. So like watching the news and everything just kind of plays into that emotional state that the natural state of the mind almost is fearing and desiring, it plays into it. So yeah, you get everyone kind of in that state of panic, and something gets said about toilet paper, and out of nowhere that goes viral, and you're worried about wiping your ass for the next month.
There's truth to that.
It's not the end of the world, but it's like it's like irrational to like want to like hoard all that, and you see all these people hoarding all these masks and gloves, and they're worried about themselves. It's always about me. Yet, you got doctors and nurses out there that actually need that shit.
Right.
And having you hold on to it it's detrimental to maybe saving another person's life, when it's just like, just listen to what the CDC is saying. Wash your freaking hands. Like, there's plenty of other ways to do it. And, yeah, you can see how people really don't rely on this. Like, I don't know. It's quite a question.
It's funny you say that, because a lot of my daily vlogs have been about fear. Since this whole thing broke, it has been a matter of panic and fear, and like you said, that selfishness sort of takes over. The hoarding is just so when I have conversations with people surrounding like 9/11 or something like that, where you have people who, and everybody was afraid when that went down, but that was more of a man-made thing. Two man-made things got brought down by man-made ideas and technology. So we weren't necessarily at war with the planet, as it were, but there were two sorts of reactions that I have seen amongst men, right? And I'm painting a broad brush, but we're talking about the tough guy, right? And you had one tough guy who went out to the gun store and bought up all the bullets and is now hunkering down in their house waiting for the terrorist to attack his Ford Focus specifically, which is a fear response. But in the response of that person, in their head, they are doing the bravest thing they possibly could do, despite the fact that the outcome of that move is one of fear and one of isolation and one that only sort of creates a feedback loop on top of itself, right? Versus like the people that were either serving in the military and re-enlisted to go do the thing, or weren't in the military and signed up and were like, all right, I'm going to go put foot to butt for my country. Not to say one was right or wrong, but to say that there's a difference in, because there was fear involved, I would know, there was fear involved with making the decision to know that the country was going to war, re-enlist, and go fight the war. A whole nother thing to go buy a bunch of bullets and hunker down. And that was the exact same reaction those same people had to the coronavirus, which they went out to the gun shops and bought a bunch of bullets. Why? You can't shoot the coronavirus, but you've already made this story up in your mind. Oh, society is going to collapse and it's going to be pandemonium in the streets and it's going to be Mad Max in about a month or 2 weeks. When we all know like that's just not going to happen. Like that, when you really think about it from a reasonable standpoint and you just stay right in the moment of like, all right, honey, do we have enough toilet paper for 2 weeks? No. All right, I'll go grab some. That's really all you needed. You know, I mean, we went to the grocery store and probably bought 2 weeks worth of supplies, and only because like all the restaurants and stuff are closed. So normally we eat out. Normally we're on the road a lot. So we're constantly eating at Starbucks, constantly eating at diners and all that kind of thing. So I've actually lost weight since this whole thing has started.
Wow.
No fasting needed, actually. Just a little daily discipline. But it's but that in and unto itself. So like you're saying, and like what we've pointed out, is that you could be taking this quarantine and this isolation time to reflect on yourself, to better your meditation practice, to get into the groove of a new routine, or to break the old routine, or practice on your Tai Chi. I know I've been doing a lot of bow practice. I know you have too, because every time we get back together, you're like a ninja. It's like, you look like Donatello. Yeah, that's a little children of the 90s jokes there, folks. And it's like, that's using this time wisely. And I've been saying throughout a lot of the podcasts, like people are suddenly stuck with themselves. They haven't spent any time with themselves. They haven't spent any time with their families. And now they don't like the idea of being alone in their own head for any amount of time. Right? At all.
That's where you meditate, you know. It's a sad thing to see, to come to that realization that you can't spend 2 weeks alone by yourself, and to be antsy and worried about that and be automatically bored and frustrated. Yeah, that's being, you know, like I was saying, too much yang, and need to get back more into the yin to be able to sit with yourself and be with yourself. And
right,
it's definitely not easy, but it's a worthwhile endeavor, and it's a worthwhile exploration, you know,
right.
instead of, as they say, always going out, turn in. And now's the time where we could actually do that a little bit more. And yeah, you know, getting back to like the system, right? And acts of bravery and stuff like that, seeing people automatically buying bullets and guns, and and hoarding all this food and toilet paper and everything, if you really trusted the system, you'd be really just trusting your community at large and your neighbors and everything, and realizing that even if shit hits the fan, I know I can rely on my neighbor. That we have lost that, and we don't rely on our neighbor. And really, like, a brave act would be is to check on your elderly neighbor and make sure that you go food shopping for them or something like this, to make sure that they don't have to go out. And you can do that simply by a telephone call, so you don't have to have the contact, and you can drop it off at their front doorstep so they don't get exposed. And brave act would be to take all those gloves that you bought and drop them off at the hospital, so doctors don't die and nurses aren't dying, getting sick, because they have to take care of people for like 20 hours a day. Like, those are brave acts. You go out and spend your money on bullets to what? Kill your neighbor? I mean,
Yeah.
What's the point of that? You're adding to the chaos. As much as you want to keep the peace, you're adding to it. You're stressing everyone out. So, I mean, I understand where they're coming from, because it's based all on self-preservation, fear.
Right.
So, but if you really want to be a warrior, you really want to be someone like that, then check up on your neighbors and give your medical supplies to someone who actually really needs them. So
how would you foresee making the leap from arguably a culture that has been conditioned to fear for nearly 20 years now, ever since, I want to say, we got sort of the trifecta of Y2K, 9/11, and the dot-com crash, and everything was just very scary for a little while. And then we hit the housing market crash, and then there was the recession in 2008. So there was a lot of these actual things that happened that caused a lot of fear. It didn't help that we have had administrations and leaders that have fed into the fear. I mean, if you remember our color-coded days, how scared should you be today was the way of things for 7 years. And I don't feel anything good has come after that, and certainly nothing good now. So you have basically cowardly leaders that are making cowardly decisions and sending their cowardiceness to the rest of their population, and those that they're supposed to be in charge of, or at least be leading. So it then does fall back to the individual to make the choice to be brave and not afraid, because you're kind of on your own right now. But how would you see that going forward? I'm a person that, I already hoarded. I already did those things, right? But I'm looking out the window and I'm feeling a little ashamed, maybe, or feeling like there's got to be a better way. How would you go about bringing them, or what should be their first step in going forward towards bravery? Yeah. More yin, less yang.
Well, I don't know, like, I'm not the bravest person, right? So, and this is only a suggestion, first things first, you got to meditate.
Yeah, that's right.
You got to do some Tai Chi.
Get your Tai Chi on. That's right.
But in all seriousness, though, because that, or some sort of like practice, like even yoga, but not just the exercise of yoga, but the spiritual side of yoga, or Tai Chi and your meditation, because we're all too tense. We're holding too much energy inside ourselves, and because of the tension, it builds up, and you can see that physically manifest itself when you get physically sick. Stress is like the silent killer now. So, and Crohn's disease and all these other things that really affect our immune systems and everything. I think we first need to relax so you can think clearly, because if we're all stressed out and paranoid and fear riddled, that you can't think clearly. So first we have to properly purge the system and clean the system out first. And that goes into eating healthy as well, and to not be drinking excessive amounts of alcohol. I think that really plays into it as well, because that clouds your mind.
Oh, you're losing that argument now.
Yeah, I'm gonna throw it out there, man. You can take it or leave it. You know, it's like it's your choice. You know, if you want to stay in the current state, then you know you're more than welcome to do it. But if you want to change and you want to see the peace and the harmony, then that's all internal. You have to go within. So it's as a community, I think we need to maybe focus that a little bit more and start teaching the youth that a little bit more, especially with issues like bullying and such. If we teach a little bit of mindfulness, I believe that can go a long way, and we can make it cool and hip as well. It's not that hard. You know, you teach that to a few generations of kids, and out of nowhere, that like crawls on out, and then everyone's a little bit more mindful. So externally, if we stop going so external and turn internal, I think that would be the start. And then from there, it's almost as if everything will take its natural course, and we'll let the Tao take over from there, just as long as we're mindful. We will be able to take care of ourselves once we get back to breathing properly, and to be able to just sit and not be at war within ourselves, because that's ultimately why we have an external war, because internally we're adrift, we're a mess.
Yeah, I like that metaphor, because in many ways life is a river, and it can be a raging river, it can be a calm river, but it's just a river. And the tumult that we feel comes down to not knowing, number one, and I think this is where this is going, or like this just sort of struck me, is the idea of I have to first realize that I'm even in a river to understand what has to happen next. That's sort of that awakening moment of like, oh, one of the reasons I'm being tossed around right now is because I'm in choppy waters. I'm actually like floating, and I feel like I'm drowning all the time because, well, I am. I just didn't realize why. And so now you realize that, okay, now you're in a river, which means you can now build a boat or find something to float on. The better you get, the more you practice with your meditation, your Tai Chi, your yoga, or whatever your spiritual practices are, your internal practices, your boat gets better, your paddles get stronger, and you start to recognize rough waters, calm waters, where the river's going to bend, where it's going to turn, when you can take tributaries that are going to lead you in the right direction, and even when to get out of your boat and stay where you are for a moment at port. Yeah, I think I from a metaphorical standpoint, I think that's the message that has to get out there, like to make it palatable for people. Like if you're tired of being afraid, and fear is an addictive emotion. I mean, that's why we have roller coasters and horror films, right? But to get away from fear, to stop living your life on a fear basis, you have to just realize like this is all just a part of going down the river. But in order to do that, you have to first realize you're even in a river to start, right? So that has been my deep thought of the day.
So it's like the saying, anyone can be a captain in calm seas, right?
That's right.
So
that's right. We had funny enough, when I was in basic training, so it's going back eons ago, when we went out to our field training exercise, we had to go out for a week. First, and I'm from the city, so I'd never like spent more than a night under the stars. And now we're going to be out there for a week. And the moment, like the day before we left, it was 70 degrees. The day we left, it was 20 degrees. And while we were out there, I think the average temperature was about 13 degrees. And we come back and we look a mess. We look like we've just gone to war with Russia in the Arctic, with like against the elves and Santa Claus. It was like this 3-piece thing. And we looked a mess, victorious, but a mess. And the battalion commander says, anybody can be a soldier when it's 65 and sunny. It's a whole nother thing when it's 13 degrees and it's wet and it's snowing and it's nasty and you just want to quit and your body wants to quit. So yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
So, but that's the point. Like the calm seas are the times that you are practicing. Those times are more important than anything else, because choppy seas only happen for a small period of time. You're going to spend most of your life in calm waters, quite frankly, right? Dealing with the crises or the aftermaths of the rapids. So when you're on the calm seas is when you have to practice most. That's when you have to develop your muscles and develop your mantras and your practices, and because you need them when you hit the choppy water, you know, is the idea there. So everybody needs to meditate, and everybody needs Tai Chi.
You know, part of what you were saying, like what could we do to make the transition and to whip up society a little bit differently? And I've done not a whole lot of backpacking, but a little bit from a guy from the suburbs here. And one of the things I have found that we should all be teaching our youth and even adults as well is to really make an effort to get out into the wilderness for at least at least 4 days, if not 7.
Yeah.
You need that time to stay out there. A day-long hike is not going to do it. And you have to pack your food, and you have to pump your water, and you have to pack the correct clothing. And that really will begin to teach us our wants and our needs. Because when you have to carry a 40-pound backpack for 6 days straight, you really got to think twice about bringing, this other piece of clothing or this other food that really isn't like nutritionally dense and like beneficial for your hike. And you'll start
leave my gushers alone, man.
You can bring your gushers. Because sometimes you need that comfort food at the campfire, or a long 10, 15, 20-mile day, or whatever, how many miles you can pack in a day. But yeah, but no, and seriously, they're like, and to pump your water, you get these little pumps, and like, and you're pumping and pumping. It takes you like 10, 15 minutes or however long for just a liter of water. The last thing you're going to do is waste one drop of water.
That's true.
Because now you realize the importance of that water, especially when you're out on the trail and it's 90 degrees and you're like I'm so thirsty. I got to pump water for 15 minutes just to get something. It's like, water is life. It's precious, and
right.
Food, you shouldn't be wasting it, especially when you're out on the trail. You realize that, and your clothing, it's not about fashion, it's about function. And I think that would also help in our desiring state, and the state of like constant consuming America, your wants and your needs, and the confusion that can come into play with that. The mountains and the rivers and the forests will teach you how to differentiate the needs and the wants, and that can also calm down a lot of things and calm down the energy and help people. I know it helped me.
So, but what you're really talking about now here, because now we're getting into like a deeper level, because we began this talking about the illusion versus the reality, but the reality of biology and of our animalistic nature is, if there's food, we eat it. If there's water, we drink it. Like, we're gluts because we evolved in a world of scarcity and now inhabit a world of abundance. What you're now saying is that we have to forge a discipline of scarcity, despite the fact that everything is at our fingertips on a normal basis. I turn on the tap, I get water. I open the fridge, I pull out some gushers. I don't leave my gushers in the fridge. That's nasty. Right. But it's you actually have to go out of your way to say no in many ways, because it's easy to reach out and just grab stuff. And by going out into the woods and having to carry everything you need on your back, you're enforcing scarcity upon yourself, which then makes you more, it's like our grandparents or great grandparents who lived through the Great Depression and World War II, and they saved like everything. They were like hoarders because they had so little for such a long period of time, and knew how to like do all these crazy things that we all just go to the grocery store to do now, like make bread and make stuff out of milk that's going bad and all that kind of thing. So what we actually have to do now is enforce scarcity upon ourselves, essentially, is what we're saying. Go out in the forest, get away from the straight lines, only take what you need, and learn a lot about who you are as a person while you're out there.
I don't know if that's really enforcing scarcity though. Like, I'm not saying like you can't bring food, like, and you can't bring a sweater if it's cold.
Sure.
You can still bring food. It's just a matter of bringing the food you need, and that be beneficial for your hike, and like give you a rundown on protein, carbohydrate, sugar intake, and all this stuff, and figuring out, okay, if I have Snickers bars for 6 days straight, I'm gonna feel like dog shit. Like, so learning, I think, is not really like scarcity. Like, I'm not saying like, only have a half a can of beans per day or something. Like, bring as much food as you want. Just have an understanding of what food will do what for you and how much you actually will need per meal to get you through the hike. But yeah, and maybe in the meantime, before you start figuring that out, scarcity does come into play. Maybe you don't bring enough food and you learn, okay, like this food works, this food doesn't work. And then you begin to start learning like what your body is calling for versus like, and what it needs versus like what your mind is inputting on it and saying like, oh, I want this, I want that. I'm still getting over a sugar addiction. And it's like, in about like 2 months, I just had one cheat day in the past 2 months. Other than that, no sugar. And man, I was eating sugar. Like, you would have like, oh, we'll have like 3 or 5 chocolate chip cookies. Nah, I would smash like 2 dozen in a sitting. No problem. Like, honestly. And, like learning that energy that's inside my head that's calling for that sugar and being like, no, or actually what's inside my gut, where that bacteria is in my intestines and stomach, that's actually making maybe the signal to my brain to call for it. I think that hiking would help in that way too, because you start to begin to learn more about yourself and to learn about your processes and learn about your reactions and such, and how you handle certain situations. Like, for instance, we're in this coronavirus at the moment, and none of us have ever been in, well, let me rephrase that. Like, most of us aren't like very exposed to these certain types of like live or die situations. And maybe that would be beneficial if we went out into the woods and exposed ourselves a little bit more from the creature comforts of our own home, and to get out and to explore that other side of like pushing the envelope of fear and what is actual like danger, and to get out there and to experience it, to harden up.
It's funny you say that. I read an article, or at least saw the headline the other day, that would say this pandemic is the closest thing civilians will come to the experience of war. Right, where there's a threat everywhere and you can't see it. Wow. And that's essentially what modern, at least since the second half of the 20th century till the present, that's what modern warfare has been. You're going up against an invisible enemy, and you're basically at risk at all times, like even in your own home. Wherever you touch down. So I think it's interesting that you drew that comparison without the prompting of the same article that I read. So that's pretty cool.
Yeah.
You're a smart man sometimes.
I read books and repeat what they say.
There you go.
None of these ideas
I read and I know things. All right. Speaking of which, we're almost to the end of our hour here. That went by fast. This is how we end up hanging out for hours on end. these kind of conversations. So final statements here. What do you got?
What do I got?
What do you got? Final statement.
Everybody needs Tai Chi.
There you go. You don't need much more than that. Oh man. So just for our audience here, as a reminder, you can find Shane and myself at Tai Chi with Veterans on Facebook. And we're going to be doing these chi casts right now, randomly, and maybe we'll come up with a schedule at some point, see what happens. But you can always catch them either on Facebook or on YouTube at Tai Chi with Veterans. You'll see the icon, as it were. Anything else I need to put out there, Shane?
You can head over to my Facebook page, Tai Chi with Shane, and like that, and yeah, there it is. In veteran classes up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and also doing group classes and even private lessons if you so choose. And yeah, so feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'm here.
Now, I didn't get an invite to Tai Chi with Shane.
I know. Well, it's official now. It's out.
Oh, it's official.
It's a launch party right here. Go big or go
left out. Like, wait. That's not. So I have a picture of you on Tai Chi with Marcus. So you're gonna have a picture of me on Tai Chi with Shane. I think that's just quid pro quo.
Fair enough, for sure.
That's in like the Facebook rules or something. I don't know. Shameless plug and promotion. And yeah, you can catch live streams, live classes, live interviews, all sorts of live stuff online while we're doing the quarantine. And hopefully this will create a library of things we can continue to pump out once the quarantine lifts and life steps into the new normal, whatever that normal is going to be. Yeah, because I think we're like locked down to the end of the month, right? To the end of April, at least.
To the end of April, yeah. Speaking of normal, this is something I found on the Book of Many Faces. In the rush to return to normal, use this time to consider which parts of normal are worth rushing back to. That's by Dave Hollis.
Yeah, that has been going around a lot right now, and this goes to that central point of society being an illusion. You know, we're finding now that a lot of us can work from home. We're finding now that either we love the people that we live with, or man, we got a lot of work. We're finding that money is a real obstacle, but it's not real, right? Like a lot of the things we've talked about, and I know that you've been in sort of the Venus Project, Jacques Fresco sort of world for a long, the Ubuntu concept as well. And those have been around since the mid 2000s. So to see what has been said for so long now hitting the mainstream, I think it is important to think about what you want the world to look like, or at least you want your world to look like when this is all over. You know, man, it's all on display. The illusion is on display right now, and it is
people, man. Tell them to demand it from the leaders, from the government, politicians, and everything. Like your bosses.
Yeah.
Everyone gets together and says, "We're not doing this. Make the change." Isn't that how that change occurs?
Change starts with you.
Yeah.
I'm talking with the man in the mirror. Oh yeah. All right, everybody. Have a great day. We'll have another Chi Cast live tomorrow with Sam and Arlette. Ooh, nice. First one I'm not going to be a part of. That'll be nice. I'll just watch and make funny comments.
That's what you would do. It's awesome.
And actually, I'll have a class tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. You'll have the link right here. It'll be streamed live to everybody. just before that cheat cast. So yeah, and yeah, get ready, get used to seeing Shane's face because he's going to be joining us shortly in those classes.
That's it. Here we go.
There it is. All right, everybody. I wish you all health, happiness, harmony. Till I see you again. Have a great one.